Hey out there, and welcome to today's Search Engine Journal webinar. It's a chilly day here in West Virginia, and we're thrilled to have you here with us. I'm joined today by Zach Kadish of Conductor, who will be sharing with us today keyword research for SEO, best practices, and top tips. So we all know that a solid keyword strategy is one of the most important aspects of your organic strategy. So today we're going to talk through the finer points of keyword research that can help you increase your site's organic visibility and give your customers exactly what they need right when they're searching for it. So my name is Heather Campbell, and I'll be your moderator today. Zach, thanks for being here with us. Before we get into some general housekeeping, tell us a little bit about yourself and Conductor.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. So my name is Zach Kadish. I'm a senior SEO success manager at Conductor, based in New York City. And I've been working at Conductor for a little over 5 years, dealing with our enterprise clients. So I'm really excited today to kind of show you just some actionable tips that I do with them, and also some best practices around how to do keyword research at scale. And Heather, take it away with some housekeeping items.
Awesome. So for everybody out there watching with us today, if during this training presentation you have any questions or comments, please put them in the questions box at the bottom of your screen. And as you're learning and taking this information, make sure you're asking for further clarification. You know, chances are you're not the only one thinking it. So we'll also be throwing out a couple polls during the webinar today, so keep your eye on those. We love to have that engagement from you. And we will have a Q&A at the end of this presentation, so make sure you stick around for that. It's always like the best part. We get to like the meatiest stuff in that Q&A section. So we'll be doing our best throughout to link to any resources or tools in the chat, but if we miss one, definitely use the questions box to ask. And after this webinar, stick around for a short survey. It doesn't take any more than 3 minutes, and it really helps us gauge what works for you and how we can make SEJ webinars more useful. And lastly, you will absolutely 100% receive this recording later today in your inbox, so keep your eyes on that. And that's enough for me, so without any further delay, let's get to it. Zach, I'll be back at the Q&A. It's all yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Heather. And just to reiterate, like, definitely feel free, like, stream of consciousness, like, write questions within the chat. I know keyword research can be, like, really specific to, like, your organization, so we definitely want to leave a lot of time to address any of those specific answers. And to start it off, we actually want to just do a quick little poll to better understand the current audience's experience with keyword research.
All right, so everybody should see this poll now. So far it's neck and neck with I know a lot, but there's always more to learn. And then I do keyword research here and there. So we're right in those two. So we'll give everybody another second. All right, we're gonna close that poll. So Zach, can you see those results?
I actually can't, but I assume it's still neck and neck with the second and third result.
Yep, so 43% said I know a lot, but always willing to learn more, and 50% said they do a little here and there.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy that the majority of our audience knows what a keyword is. You'd be surprised, a lot of people do not. But this presentation is really for all levels of expertise. So what we really want to start off with in the beginning is kind of break down the heads and tails strategy of what we do during keyword research. I really consider keyword research like the bread and butter of SEO. So I'm really excited to kind of first break down like some best practices in terms of like how to choose the right keyword. And then a little later on, we'll start discussing a little bit more in depth of like where to place these keywords to make sure that we can increase our organic visibility. So the first thing when we're thinking about like keywords and keyword research is targeting the most relevant keywords or words or phrases for our own site. And there's a lot of things that like go into making sure that we're targeting relevant keywords. One of the first things that we're always looking at is search volume. Search volume is like the average amount of times that someone is searching for this phrase each month. So when you think about search volume, the higher the volume of searches, the higher the competition. We'll break this down a little further, but one of the main takeaways I want everyone to kind of think about when we talk about search volume is I personally consider search volume a directional metric. I don't necessarily care if thousands of people are searching for it or just 10. If that's the most relevant keyword for our business, we should definitely go after it. And when we think about relevancy, sometimes we should take a step back from our company and start to think, like, if I was truly a consumer or trying to purchase something on our site, what might I search for? We'll break down relevancy a little bit more during today's session, but just from a high level, if we're an e-com site and we see a lot of content aggregators showing up on page 1 of Google, maybe it's not the best keyword for us to go after. So just keep that in mind. Also, I like to break down keywords into 2 main areas, head keywords and longer tail keywords. So when we think of head keywords, think of like something like reading glasses. It has a lot of search volume. It's really attractive because hundreds of thousands of people are searching for it, but it's really competitive and it's really harder to rank on because a lot of people are going after it and it's a little bit more vague. When we think of longer tail keywords, they have a little less search volume, but they're actually easier to rank on and a little easier to convert on because the user actually is a little bit further down in their buyer's journey. So let's break this down a little further. When we think of keywords ranking on our website, longer tail keywords can actually collectively account for over 50% of our site's overall traffic. And when we think about this, it kind of makes sense. If I'm searching for like shoes, I could be looking up something like anything. I could be looking up like the history of shoes, maybe how to spell it. I'm not necessarily trying to purchase shoes yet, or at least there's a lot of things that I might be interested in. But if I'm looking up red Nike men's running shoes, I'm pretty close to buying and I likely know what I want. So that's why it's important to make sure that we're targeting longer tail keywords on our site because the user is a lot further down in their buyer's journey and there's more probability that they're going to convert on our site. And that's not to say like don't go after the head keywords, like you absolutely should. We just want to make sure that you're targeting these head keywords in the correct places. So in this example, for a high level keyword like reading glasses, maybe we want to target that on our homepage or something similar to that. Then as we get a little further down in terms of longer tail keywords, maybe bifocal glasses, we create a subcategory page around. Then men's designer reading glasses, we even have a further subcategory. So you can see that we're targeting keywords as we go, the longer the tail of the keywords, we're targeting it further on our site because that's really what the user wants. And then the longest tail keyword that's more content based, maybe we want to target this on a piece of content or somewhere within our blog. So it's not to say don't go after the head keywords, just make sure that we're targeting them in the most relevant places for our domain. So when we really think about keyword research best practices, one of the first things that we should always consider is take a step back from our company and think through the customer's voice. It's incredibly hard to create demand, so we need to match our products or our content to the customer's voice already. So we really want to make sure we're taking that customer first approach when we're doing this keyword research. After we kind of consider like what a customer might be searching for, that's really where we get into the discovery process. We do a little bit of research to understand if I was a customer or a consumer, what else might I be searching for to get to our product or to get to our landing page. And finally, we also want to make sure that you're keeping in mind not only search volume, we want someone to be searching for this keyword, but also keep in mind the journey stage of the buyer. And we're going to break this down a little further because based off of what the user is typing into Google, you can kind of better understand their intent or where they're searching right now. So when we think of the customer journey, the first area that we're thinking of is like the early stage. This is when a customer or a consumer is typically typing in like the who, what, where, and why. Like they are still in the informational cycle and they're trying to better figure out about a product. Maybe they want to purchase a robotic vacuum, but they're not really sure how it works, or they're not even sure what goes into it. So they're still in the information or awareness stage, and they're not ready to purchase yet, but they want to consume content and they want to learn. The second part of the customer's journey is that comparative phase. This is what we call the middle stage because right now, maybe they learned a little bit about robotic vacuum, but they're still not sure the benefits of that versus standing vacuum. So think of these as like comparative phrases, like when people type in best versus phrases like or, they're still better understanding what are the benefits of this product versus something else. So they might not be ready to convert yet, but they also know a little bit more than just the information stage. So keep that in mind when we're targeting keywords. And then finally, we are at the end stage of the buyer's journey, which is transactional. Think of this as like cost, how much, buy, sale, The user pretty much knows what they want at this point, and now they're looking for an area to transact. So I just want everyone to kind of keep these different stages of the journey, of the customer's journey in mind, because, for example, if we have an informational content around robotic vacuum, for example, we likely shouldn't maybe target like the cost of it on that page, because Google and the user wants to surface more transactional product pages during that search. Cool. So now we're going to kind of walk through factors to consider during keyword research. And there's a lot of different things on this slide because there's a lot of different avenues to take and factors to consider when we're doing keyword research. One of the things that I always recommend to my clients is like take a look at what competitors are ranking for. If they already have a landing page or a product page around something we want to create or something we already have, there's absolutely no reason we can't better understand what are they ranking for right now. If someone's already ranking well for a keyword we want to go after, let's figure out what else they rank for. Google is rewarding them for some reason. So it's not like we're plagiarizing their content. We're just trying to mimic their visibility because, again, it is really hard to create customer demand. That's why we really need to match our content to the customer's voice. I also like to take into consider search volume. Again, I did mention it was a directional metric, but I want someone to be searching for the phrase. If 0 people are, it might not be the best keyword to go after. But then again, if 1 million people are, it might be a little too vague for us. So we really want to try to find that sweet spot based off of the intent of our content and where the customer is during their buyer's journey. Also, keep in mind demographic data or personas. Sometimes people search very differently based off of who they are or what they do. I have a client who tries to target content to both doctors and patients. When you think about that, doctors are searching for things a little bit more scientific, like they know the medical procedure name, they know a little bit more than the patient might. So it's a little different on the way we target their content because it's for different personas. So you always have to keep that in mind when we're creating content and doing keyword research. I'm also always trying to improve my clients' non-branded visibility. As a brand, we're always going to rank for our brand name because that's what we are, it's who we are. But if a user isn't familiar with us or aware of our services or our products, it's important to make sure that they're finding our content through non-branded search. I also want to make sure that we focus on search intent because this is really important to better understand, like, do we even have the ability to rank on page 1 of Google? Does Google want to show content or do they want to show transactional content? Or do they want to show evergreen content? By breaking this out and actually taking a step back and looking to see who shows up on page 1 of Google, this can be really beneficial for our content creation and during the keyword research process. It's also important to take a look at where we currently rank. If we're already ranking pretty well for a set of keywords, maybe we shouldn't target those keywords on our new content. We might end up hindering our own content by competing with ourselves. But then again, if there's keywords that are on page 2 or further and beyond, maybe those are relevant keywords to target on our new piece of content because for whatever reason, Google just doesn't want to rank us for the current piece of content we have right now. And then again, I always like to take in different factors like localization. People just sometimes refer to different things in different markets. So that's always something to keep in mind. People search in a lot of different ways and talk very differently if you're in the United States or if you're in Canada. It just depends on where you're searching from. And then also, based on seasonality, it's always important to better understand when are keywords becoming the most popular. If they're becoming popular, let's say for Black Friday or Cyber Monday, we want to do that keyword research a few months in advance because we want to gain that authority around that topic before everyone's searching for it. So that's something to keep in mind. And there's one part of this factor, one factor on here that is extremely important and something I consider to be one of the most important factors of keyword research. We're actually going to break this down in a little bit more depth during today's call. So that factor is actually search intent. So we're going to discuss a little bit more around search intent because that's one of the main things that I want people on the line to take away is when we're doing keyword research, we really need to understand the user's intent behind the search, or we're kind of setting up our page not for success. So let's break down the importance of keyword relevancy and intent in a little bit more depth. So what makes search intent so important? So remember when I was talking about head keywords versus longer tail keywords? That kind of goes into search intent. If I just type in shoes, I could technically mean anything. I could be a student looking up how to spell it. I could be someone looking up the history of shoes, not really sure what I want yet. And because of that, the page one of Google or the SERP is going to be a little bit more vague. You're going to have like Wikipedia, you might have some e-com sites, you'll likely also have some content aggregators. So it's incredibly hard to understand, like, what is this user searching for? But as we go further down the buyer's journey, we can become a little bit more relevant around a topic. So like, what really makes search intent so difficult? One of the things here is like, it's not really up to us. Like, we don't really have control over what shows up on page one of Google or the SERP. It's Google's ability. It's Google's responsibility to do that. So like, we can't always decide what this actually means. Like, that's why I think it's important to take a step back from our company sometimes, type in the keyword that you might want to target and see what shows up. If there are relevant competitors or relevant domains in your industry, it's probably a good keyword to go after. If it's not, maybe we need to take another step at what our targeted keywords are. Another thing that makes it so difficult is higher monthly search volume is really attractive. Sometimes executives see a keyword with 1 million search volume and like, let's go after that keyword. I want to rank #1 for that. And when you show them lower MSV keywords or monthly search volume keywords, they don't want to go after that. But I think it's important to kind of explain to people who aren't maybe as savvy within SEO or within organic search that it's not just us going after these keywords, it's everyone in the industry. So it's really important that we fine-tune the keywords we're using to make sure that it matches up to the intent of what the user is actually searching for. And to really break this down in a further example, I want everyone to meet Tyler Chin. So he's working a typical 9 to 5. He has a lot of internal meetings, a lot of client meetings, and he's on his 8th cup of coffee. And for whatever reason, he's having trouble going to sleep at night. So what he types into Google is, how do you sleep? If I ask any of my coworkers, how do you sleep? They'd likely come back with tips and tricks on like what they do to fall asleep at night. Maybe they turn their phone off like 30 minutes before, maybe they read a book or drink some tea. But if you ask Google, how do you sleep? You actually get a Sam Smith song in the first position. So this is just kind of to reiterate that higher volume keywords might actually bring back a little bit more vague responses on Google or results, because it could technically mean anything. Yes, Google is getting a lot smarter and a lot more conversational, but it still doesn't know exactly what we mean. And Google's job is just to try to provide the best result to the user. So for whatever reason, Google feels that the best result for this is the music video of Sam Smith. However, if we typed in, how do you sleep at night, a little bit longer tail keyword with more phrases in it, we get a lot more accurate results to what we were looking for. We get tips to sleep better at night, how to fall asleep in 10, 60, or 120 seconds. I might actually read that article after this. And then just some other guides around like what to do here. So this is just to really emphasize that like the best way to understand search intent is like go to the SERP. Also the SERP represents search engine result page. So if you've heard me say that a lot, it represents like what we see on Google. So like do your research there too. Like honestly, just go to Google and see what shows up. That's one of the best ways to better understand that. Another way to do it is see what competitors rank for. Competitors might rank for like other related keywords we might have not even been thinking about. But by understanding what they rank for too, we can now include those keywords in our content to make sure that we're showing up for the user. And then also keep in mind that the higher the volume of the keyword, the more likely it could have a different meaning. Yes, how do you sleep has like almost 6,000 to 5,000 people searching for it every single month, but how do you sleep at night has like 1,300 people searching for it every single month. But as we saw, half of those users might just be looking for the Sam Smith song. So we never really know until we actually go to the SERP, understand who's ranking for it, and then do an analysis that way. Awesome. So now we've kind of broken down like best practices and education behind what makes a good keyword. We've also talked a little bit about one of my favorite factors of keyword research, and that's search intent. It really took me a while to grasp search intent. So that's really why I want to focus half of the session on that today. But I also want to make sure that like once we do all that, like where do we put these relevant keywords? Like how do we find the relevant keywords and where do we use them? So my strategy for keyword research is 1, aligning my targeted keywords to the searcher's intent. I want to make sure that the content, whether it's a product page or a blog page, is aligned to what the searcher actually wants. Because that's really what our job is as SEOs. We want to try to match the content that we're creating to the customer's voice. And the way to do that is I typically try to target 2 to 3 main keywords per page. I'm picking a primary keyword and then supporting keywords such as secondary and tertiary keywords. Of course, there are other keywords that this page may end up ranking for that are related to this page, but I'm typically trying to structure my content around 3 important keywords. And then when I'm creating additional content, I'm not going after these same keywords because I'm trying to make sure that I have content focused on unique keywords. That way I can increase my organic visibility for all these different topics. And then again, we want to make sure that when we are creating content or where we pick a topic, it ties into what the customer is truly searching for. And again, we can't create demand. That's incredibly difficult. So we just need to do the research to match our content or our product page to the customer's voice. And then finally, once we have this topic and we have this content, our targeted keywords should align directly to that topic. However, it's also important to think of like related keywords that we might want to use within our content. People search really differently, but they might mean the same thing. So there's a lot of times where people are searching really long-tail keywords, and they're searching in a lot of different ways, but they're all trying to get to the same end result. So this is what we like to call latent semantic indexing. It's also called semantically related keywords. So this is one of the best ways to increase our relevancy and our authority around a topic. Google doesn't like to see like keyword stuffing of the same phrase over and over again. And since they know users search a lot of different ways but mean the same thing, they want to see that within your content. This could be targeted as this could be targeted in specific places or just within the body copy, but it's important to include that. When we think of semantically related keywords, they're not necessarily synonyms, but they are related to the main topic in nature. Awesome. So what we should also be doing during this process is figure out what keywords your competitors are using. And when we think of competitors in the organic space, I kind of break this out in 2 different ways, like direct competitors that the business is aware of, and then true organic competitors. There are sometimes people or domains in the space that are also writing content or ranking for similar keywords that we're ranking for. So even though the business might not consider them direct competitors, they are competing for visibility on page 1 of Google, just like we are. So it's really important to go to the SERP and do a SERP analysis. What this really involves is taking a look at all the competitors' content and the keywords that they're ranking for and figure out, should I be ranking for these keywords as well? Because we're not seeing our content on page 1 of Google and we're seeing our competitors' content, Google's rewarding them for some reason. Whether they're using the right keywords, they're using a variety of different keywords, they're structuring their content in a good way. By doing that analysis, we can better figure out what we might need to do to increase our visibility and compete with them. Cool. So now I want to pause for our second poll to better figure out, now that we did this keyword research, how can we make sure Tired Tim finds our content? There could be a lot of different places that we want to put these keywords. So I want to just pause for a second to see what the audience thinks.
Okay, Zach, so that's going. So far, we have about half of people saying title tags, a quarter of people saying header tags, and then everything else is kind of in the middle there. So let's see if we get a few more votes on this. Okay, so closing poll, and we'll share those results. So we got about 42% of people said title tags, 13% said meta description, 30% said header tags, and then URL was 3%, body copy was 11%.
Awesome. And this is actually a trick question. All of these answers are right. I'm happy that the majority of people said title tags because with our targeted keywords, that's absolutely where we want to put our keywords. We want to put them in the title tag. It's one of the most important client-facing tags and most important tags for SEO. But all these other things are still important for placing our relevant keywords. While the meta description doesn't have a ranking factor, it is important for click-through rate and engagement, because if we have our relevant keywords in the meta description, if a user types that into Google, it will actually be bolded on the SERP or on page 1 of Google. Same thing within the URL, and that doesn't have as much weight as it did in the past, which is really why I want to make sure when we have our targeted and our supporting keywords, we should really try to use these in our title tags, our header tags, and our body copy. If we're not targeting our keywords somewhere on the page, then we're not going to rank for it. And there's some instances where like businesses are like, hey, we can't say that in the H1, we won't get that approved by legal. That's fine, but we should try to find a balance between like, can we include it as an H2, an H3? Can we include it in the body copy? I'm just trying to explain to them if we never target these keywords, we're never going to rank for them. So it's just trying to explain to the business, like, I understand we want to phrase our content or our product as one thing, but we also need to match the customer's voice. So that is really a big balance during SEO. And this is an example of how Tower Team can sleep. So fake optimization of what we could potentially target on this page. And I really broke down all the different longer tail keywords that we might want to target on this page. So for example, within our title tag, how do I fall asleep at night? 1,300 people search for that every single month, followed by my brand name. Then we can have a meta description, learn some tips and tricks to make you fall asleep fast and stay asleep. And then we break out our content in different ways with related keywords that all kind of mean the same thing. Someone's trying to better figure out how to sleep, whether it's how do I fall asleep fast, how do I fall asleep earlier, tips to fall asleep easily, best way to sleep quickly, how do I fall asleep after waking up. These are just different ways that we can structure our content to make sure that users are finding our piece of content if they search any of these different ways. But like that's only half the story in my opinion. We can do all this keyword research and we can optimize our content based off that research, but optimizing the content is only half the story. We also need to like monitor our keyword rankings and the traffic related to our pages. So like what I like to do here at Conductor is like when I'm making optimizations for my clients, I'm categorizing the keywords that we're going after. I'm tying those keywords to a preferred landing page. So these keywords absolutely should be ranking for this page. If they're not, maybe we got it wrong. Maybe we need to re-optimize the content and take another look at it. Sometimes SEO is a waiting game, but if it's taking too long, we might need to re-optimize our content because it's underperforming, or we can just tell a great story of like, hey, we did not rank at all for this keyword. We did all this research, and now we're ranking better than our competitors because of what we did. So I really want to make sure that like, while we can do all the keyword research in the world, we really need to try to track our content and our keywords to show the team and to show the business all the work we're doing and how it's paying off for the company. So I know we just covered an absolute ton about keyword research in terms of like best practices, in terms of other things related to it. So I definitely want to leave a good amount of time to like discuss some question and answers that the team might have or the audience may have around this.
Awesome. So we definitely had some questions for you, Zach. People were not shy while you were talking. So let's get into it. Okay. So are there tools that could help for keyword research? For example, how could I tell what competitors are ranking for? This question came from Bonnie.
It's a great question, Bonnie. Here at Conductor, we have a tool within our platform called Explorer. It's not only our keyword research index, but it's also combined with SEMrush's keyword research index. So it's one of the biggest, most proprietary indexes out there. And the way that it benefits you is like you can do keyword research around just a phrase, around our own domain, or around a competitor's domain. So by using that tool, we can better understand what someone's ranking for. You could do the same thing in SEMrush or some other keyword research tools. We also, Conductor, have a free Chrome extension that if you are signed in, like if you use Chrome or Microsoft Edge, for example, you can actually download it for free. And then if you click the extension, it will show you what this page is ranking for, not only our page, but a competitor's page. So I absolutely recommend to use a keyword research tool to find this competitive data.
Perfect. So Safula asked, can you explain again about head keywords? So I know that was kind of early on.
Yeah, absolutely. Think of head keywords as like the highest volume keywords out there. Like for example, like I know like pizza, for example, that's a head keyword because it could technically mean anything. Like sure, you might be like trying to eat pizza, but you might also be looking up where pizza was first made, where it was founded, how to spell it. I don't know why I keep bringing up the spelling aspect, but it's just kind of showed that these keywords are a little bit more vague. Like no one really knows what, even Google doesn't really know what the user's searching for. So they just try to throw everything at the user and hope that they get it right. So like head keywords are usually just like one phrase, like one word, like pizza, shoes, things like that, comb. while longer tail keywords have multiple phrases within them, at least 4 sometimes, which is a little bit longer tail. So people break out longer tail keywords in different ways. I typically like to say like 3 to 4 keywords or phrases are a longer tail keyword, and they usually have a little less volume.
Perfect. So Bonaire is asking, and this is a good question and one that we get often, how can a smaller business with a smaller budget compete with a large national companies with bigger marketing budgets?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And honestly, that's one of my favorite things about SEO. It's not like a play-to-play. It's not like a play-to-play traffic source. It's not like paid search where like the bigger companies can just spend endless amounts of budget and then just always be ranking in paid search because they have more budget than us. In SEO, if you are the most relevant result for that search, for the user's query, you can show up. I see a lot of times that smaller domains or smaller businesses actually outrank the bigger competitors. And again, there are big companies that are investing in SEO, like in e-com sites, sometimes like Walmart and Target, like they're just like behemoths of a site and they're always going to rank for things. But if you're truly the most relevant result for that keyword, you will show up because Google doesn't really care if you're a big company or a small company. They don't even necessarily care about like how well you're SEOing the page. They really just want the user to get the most relevant result and have unique content. So if we're doing that as a business, we can likely compete with the bigger brands.
Great. So Ben is asking, and so I think this was a little bit of an earlier question. So Ben was asking, what is the tool that is showing search volume over time in the search results page in the screenshot that you had?
Everyone always asks that. That's actually courtesy of, we have an audience research team here who they use this tool, Keywords Everywhere. It's like another Chrome extension, I believe, and it shows you the search volume and the difficulty of the keyword within the SERP itself. So I have to give credit to our keyword research team over here for finding that tool.
Awesome. So Jeff is asking, how do we find out the semantic keywords?
Exactly. So we have to use a keyword research tool for that typically. And the way I like to do that is like putting in a phrase into the keyword research tool will show you other keywords that are related to it. There's other things that you can do, like I know there's like free websites like Answer the Public. Also, if you like do a Google search, sometimes they like will autocomplete or like show related searches. That's another way to do it without a keyword research tool. Like just see what else shows up on Google when you type in a phrase. Or if you think something's related, see who shows up on page 1 of Google. If it's like the same result, probably a related keyword. But I typically rely on a keyword research tool to do this because like if I'm a domain or if my competitors, if there's a competitor domain ranking for my target keyword and then a lot of other keywords that are maybe not the same thing I was going after, I can kind of spot that those are related keywords to the topic because they're also ranking on page 1 as well as the target keyword that I want to go after.
Great. So Ronnie is asking, do on-page rank math scores matter? I've always felt it makes my content, it makes me stuff my content with keywords too much.
What was the first part of the question? What was the score?
Do on-page rank math scores matter?
I'm actually not too familiar with rank score math or what that is, but on-page copy is absolutely beneficial to improving our SEO. Like if we're not including the keywords on the page, whether it's in the body copy, whether it's in the header tags or the title tag, like we're not going to be able to rank for these phrases. And there's times where if we're not necessarily targeting it, Google may actually still rank us for a related phrase because like they know we're similar to that, but we absolutely need to include like our targeted or supporting keywords in the body copy to make sure that we're showing up for it.
Perfect. So here's a great question from Raul. How can we use SEO to trigger Google Discover algorithm?
That's a great question. So there's like some specific like intricacies like within webmaster tools to like show up for Google Discover, and like not everyone will show up for it. Like they're only going to show like people specific in that industry. Like if you're like news or like I'm not specifically sure like what your domain might be, but like you do have to kind of like follow just the typical keyword research strategy as well. And like one of the things that I like to do too when I'm doing keyword research, and we didn't get into it as much, is like see what universal result types show up. Are there different answer boxes, or people also ask showing up on the SERP. So then maybe we want to optimize for those result types as well.
Great. So Brandon is asking if some of your pages rank well for specific keywords versus other pages not ranking well for those keywords. How do you approach the situation?
So it seems like we have keywords ranking well for some phrases and other pages not ranking at all.
Yes.
Well, and sometimes if it's not broke, you don't want to fix it. Like if we have page one visibility on content, like for our content, we might not want to actually change that at all. We might want that content to continue to do well. But again, if there's content that's just not performing well over time, it might not always be keyword research. Like there could be a technical aspect to it. Like we might not be internally linking the page enough, so like Google just can't find it. There could be something else hindering the page, like from a page speed perspective. But then also you might need to take another look at the keywords you're targeting. Like that happens a lot with my clients. Like we might go after a keyword and we just realize like this isn't like what Google wants to surface for that phrase. The SERP or page one of Google is always changing. Google's always updating their algorithm. So like sometimes a good keyword for this page no longer is. So you might need to re-optimize it or take another look at it. But if your page isn't ranking for like a targeted keyword or any keywords within like a month or two, then it's definitely time to like kind of take another look at it and understand what's going on, because like SEO is a longer term game, but it shouldn't be that long.
Perfect. So Fernanda has a question and she's coming from the agency side. She says, if you're offering keyword research as a service, what would be the deliverables that you should be giving to the client?
So it depends. Like sometimes if you're trying to do keyword research at scale for the entire domain, it's a little bit more difficult. Like sometimes you have to like match up a targeted keyword to a specific URL. Like kind of like keyword mapping, that takes a little bit more time because like you're mapping a specific keyword to a specific page. In addition to that, there could also be like a keyword research for just one page. So it kind of depends on the ask, but I definitely think doing that research prior to content being launched is always helpful, because then we can better understand what we want to rank for.
There are so many questions, Zach. I mean, I'm just trying to go through them and like, there's a ton of them, I'll tell you. So we'll share them all with you afterwards. So Tyler has a good question. What tools can I use to forecast SEO KPIs?
That's a good question. So there's like a few things. It depends what your KPIs are. Like you can't always like necessarily like predict things within SEO, because it's not just like us doing it in a silo. There's competitors doing it as well. And there's also like Google, who we don't know what they're going to do. They could always come out with a new algorithm update, which would hinder our ability. So I always like to be a little conservative with my SEO KPIs, but in general, like you can do a seasonality report. I love doing these for my clients, especially if they're like in the e-com space, to show them these products become really popular during these months. Let's make sure that we're optimizing our content months prior to that. So by the time everyone's searching for it, we are authoritative and relevant. I've done that with a lot of clients for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and those pages rewards even months later. Like people search that way in March, like, or in August. It's interesting to see, but that's something I would recommend if you're trying to plan out your content calendar or something similar to that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. So Dean has a good question. How do you optimize for targeted keywords where the SERPs return multiple intents?
That's a great question, and that happens a lot. Like I mentioned, sometimes with SERP intent that it's either transactional or content. Sometimes it's like mixed intent. Like sometimes Google doesn't even know what the user wants, and they surface both content and transactional. In that instance, if like you're still seeing competitors of yours or like organic competitors, I would still go after it, because like sometimes Google just testing things out. Like maybe in a month it will all be transactional, or it will all be content, or in 2 months it will go back to a mixed SERP. So if you still think that's a relevant keyword, go after it. But that's where the monitoring comes into play. You can't just like set it and forget it. You do need to kind of keep checking. Like, are we still on page 1? Wait, now we're on page 3. Like maybe this isn't the right keyword after all, and we have to take another look at it.
So I know that the answer to this one is going to be it depends, because I don't think there's any like quantifiable answer here, but maybe we look at it from the approach of where to start. So Rafe asked the question, how long do you spend doing keyword research? He says, I feel that there is a potential to get into an analysis paralysis situation. So how would you approach it if you're just so overwhelmed?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't want to just say it depends because I feel like that'd be a cop out. Also, I think my computer just died, but I'm still on the line. If you can hear me, so apologies for
We can
that.
still hear you.
But okay, perfect. That's what happens when you have a 4-year-old laptop. So apologies for that. But in terms of keyword research, and you definitely don't want to like get into like a paralysis analysis. Like what I recommend is like sometimes just go after a specific keyword that we feel our competitors are also targeting, or we feel is a very relevant keyword for us. Like you do know the business the best as an SEO. Like it is your business. And sometimes it's helpful to like talk internally with people and test things out. Like sometimes it is a big testing game in terms of like trying to figure out, hey, is this the right keyword? And if not, maybe we make a change. But I do always try to recommend like look at what competitors are doing because Google is rewarding them for some reason.
I think that's a great point. So Joe has a question. He says, what are your recommendations around pillar content and supporting content? How do you structure links back to pillar content?
That's a great, that's actually a great question. I actually wrote an article for Search Engine Journal around the hub and spoke model for content marketing. So definitely feel free to check that out. But that is an absolutely great way to structure our content and become authoritative around a topic. So for instance, maybe our head keyword, like our main service line, is a hub page. And then the pillar content or the spoke content in this instance are longer tail keywords that are supporting it. Maybe that's where we do the informational keywords, like the who, what, where, when, the buy keywords, or the comparative keywords. And what I always recommend is have a good internal linking structure. Where it makes sense, on the hub page or on our pillar page, link down to the other spoke content. The reason that makes sense to do is because Google just really wants to better understand what is this top level page associated to. And if we give them the ability to find all that supporting content, we become very authoritative around that topic. And Google has a very easy way to understand like what we're trying to do and what this content is about.
Great. So let's see. So Ryan asks, in B2B, the sales cycle can be longer. How do we take into consideration users' intent for the different phases of the sales cycle? A CFO is looking for different information than that of a buyer.
That's a great question. And that's where I think we really need to take into consideration like the persona of the user. Because just as I mentioned in that example where like my client is targeting for both doctors and patients, we target extremely different keywords on our landing pages. We honestly have landing pages built out for doctors and landing pages built out for patients. So we have unique landing pages targeting unique keywords for that specific persona, because we know in that instance, like the CFO is going to be searching something a little bit different than maybe the sales rep, for instance. So we try to create our content for personas if that's really what our business is focused on. So in that instance, you might actually have different competitors for different landing pages. Like you might have a little bit more educational or authoritative pieces of content for your CFO content. You might have a little bit more evergreen content for your sales reps. So it is important that sometimes you might have different competitors for different personas. So do a little bit of keyword research prior to that for those personas and for each of your competitors.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You've got to have content for all pieces of that funnel, right? So Deep is asking, how can you leverage both SEO and paid? Is there an option in Conductor to do that?
There is an option. We have a feature like Paid and Organic Optimizer, and it really shows us the organic rank of the keywords that we're tracking and how much people are bidding on them. And I'm a big believer in breaking down the silos of paid and organic teams. Sometimes you wear many hats and you are doing both. Other times it's fully two teams dedicated to each other that like don't share the data. So I always recommend to share that data and have synergy between the channels, because like, for example, SEO is a longer term game. Paid search is a shorter term play. If we're not ranking for a keyword through SEO, through organic search, maybe it makes more sense to spend more money on that phrase and get some traffic to our site as we optimize the content. Or vice versa, if we're ranking really well for a keyword and we're also spending a lot of money on it, it could make sense to refocus that budget in another keyword that we just don't show up well for. So it's kind of like a testing game. I know a lot of brands sometimes like to show up both paid and organic on the SERP. Other times we could reuse that money elsewhere and increase our visibility in another sector or another service line. So I think the first step is like breaking down the silos between those teams and then better understanding where we rank for the keywords that we're spending money on. It could make sense to test out increasing our budget for keywords we don't rank on or decreasing our budget for keywords we do rank well for.
Great. So Mohammed asks, for e-commerce website keyword, it's generic like socks is the only one term for that product. How should they plan to write content with other keywords for socks?
So could you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
That's okay. The word, it didn't come out very well. So basically it sounds like, it's an e-commerce website. They sell socks, but there's different variations of the socks. So how would you write content with the other keywords for socks so that everything's not, maybe the same?
That's a great question. And in this case, I would need to like do a little bit more keyword research around the topic. Again, we want to try to match our content with the customer's voice. Like sometimes in some industries, there's just like not a lot of demand around specific things. In this instance, if we're only selling socks, maybe there are longer tail keywords like think modifiers, like the size of the sock, the style of it. Is it fluffy? Is it a no-show? Think the colors. Like those are modifiers that people really do search for in long tail. And maybe there are specific pieces of content that we can write about the benefits of socks, like in terms of like wearing them with like how to style them. Maybe that's something we can write about, like if someone's looking for how to style your socks at a wedding, for example. Maybe that's something that we can do keyword research around. But the point of this is just to really show that we need to do some keyword research before writing the content. In some instances, there just might not be a ton of demand, but likely we can surface some relevant phrases that we might want to go after.
Great. So James is asking, how do you work with smaller agencies? Does Google My Business help SEO?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how those are necessarily related, but just in general, like Google My Business is absolutely important for local SEO. A lot of searches are local in nature. Like if someone searches pizza near me, for example, they're looking for pizza and they're hungry right now. So they may actually go search for something or go and leave their apartment or house and find it. And especially with the growth of mobile, like with mobile search and mobile first indexing, local search has become more important than ever before. So having a Google My Business listing is extremely important just for credibility, for people to know what your business is, and to make sure that you can show up in the local pack or on, which is when you have like locations on the SERP. So that is absolutely important to have.
Great. So Tyler's asking, do you have experience with scaling up content output to increase organic traffic? And if so, how do you go about doing that?
That's a great case. So for example, what I did with one of my clients is we had a really aggressive content output. We wanted to create 40 pieces of content within like 3 months, all around one topic. So pretty difficult to do in a sense because it's a short time period to write a lot of pieces of content. So what we did here was the first step was actually keyword research. I did a search demand landscape around what people were focusing on or talking about around this topic. Then I also identified what competitors, direct and organic, were also already creating content around this topic. After that, I had a really big keyword set of potential phrases to go after. I prioritized it by search volume to start, but then I reviewed it with my client. They approved of the specific topics that we would go after. They handed off that content to their agency to fully break out the content briefs, like title tags, header tags, things like that. And then they also had a content team to help finish the content and write it out in terms of their brand and their tone. So this was a relatively bigger team. I was working with an enterprise company, but the point of it was that we were able to increase our rank for that targeted keyword to #1 after only a few months of creating this content because we showed Google how authoritative we were around it.
Perfect. So Zach has a question. He says, how do you go about tracking what keywords you have used in content My company has multiple departments where we picked out keywords, and now I am managing how we incorporate them.
Yeah, well, first off, great name. And second, like what I really like to focus on with tracking those keywords is like, I honestly tie keywords to a page itself. Like there's different ways to think about it. Like you could categorize all the keywords in one category, which is helpful, but I also like to tie a specific set of keywords to one landing page. And if that keyword isn't ranking for that one landing page, and for whatever reason it's ranking for another one, I get alerted right away. So I know, hey, maybe there's keyword cannibalization here. Maybe we have another piece of content that's actually better suited for it. In other instances, if like you didn't pick the keywords to start and now you're managing it, sometimes it's helpful to like take a step back from the company and just plug those URLs into a keyword research tool, or use the Conductor Chrome extension and see what keywords it's ranking for right now on page 1. If you think those are good targeted keywords to continue going after, then let's go after them still and just track that accordingly. If not, it might make sense to re-optimize that content.
Great. Oh, I just lost the question that I had highlighted. All right, so let's go to the next one. So so Carly is asking, what is the name of the keyword Chrome extension that you mentioned? And we'll make sure that everything that Zach mentioned, we'll make sure is in the follow-up email to everybody.
Yes, that was called Keywords Everywhere. It might have a different name now, but that's what I downloaded it as. It should be Keywords Everywhere in the Chrome extension store. And while you're in that store, please feel free to download the Conductor Chrome extension too, because it can really give you really cool insights around how your page is currently ranking right now.
Great. And we'll find that hub and spoke issue or article. But somebody asked, so Colton asks, back to the hub and spoke model, is it more important to link from the hub page back to the spokes, or from the spokes to the landing page, or both?
That's a great question. So I would link from the hub down to the spokes. Think of Google can only get to our site by following the link. So we want to make a really clear site architecture for them to follow. So we want to link from our hub page down to other spoke content. And then within that spoke content, we want to also continue to link to other spoke content that's related to it. You can absolutely link back to the hub page somewhere that it makes sense, but it's more important from my perspective, from a user's perspective, and from Google's perspective to like go from the top all the way down to the bottom, because it already has enough trouble finding all the links on our site if we're not doing a good job linking to it. So this really makes it helpful for Google to find all the content that's related to it. So I would link from the hubs to the spokes.
Great. So Nikki also has a question asking, can you explain how linking internal and external can contribute to keyword ranking?
That's a great question. And in all honesty, like I don't focus that much on backlinking. I'm just a true believer that if we have great content, the links will come. That's really what I think about backlinking. Like I know it was more of a thing back in the day, but I don't honestly focus too much attention on that. It's obviously sometimes important to focus on, but I honestly am just more prioritized on like making sure our content is the most relevant and most unique. But I am a very big believer that internal linking can absolutely increase our authority and our keyword rankings because we have control over that. It's sometimes like the biggest missed opportunity in my eyes for clients to not have a really strong internal linking strategy, because we control the anchor text and we control where we're sending the user. So that really goes back to that hub and spoke model. If we're linking down from a hub page to our spoke content, we really want to make sure that we're also within our anchor text, that's like the blue link that's hyperlinked. We want to make sure that it's a primary keyword or a targeted keyword for that article or for that spoke content. Because that way, when Google finds it, they know what this page is about already. And when a user sees it, they also know what the page is about. So I'm an absolutely big believer of internal linking.
Great. So Andrea is asking, do you have any advice for optimizing keywords that yield 0-click results in the SERP?
So is it like zero, like was the question around 0-click SERPs? Or?
Yeah, 0 clicks. So they're getting impressions on it, but they're not clicking through to the site is what it sounds like.
Got it. I mean, in some instances, like I understand that might be disappointing for the business, but like if we rank in the answer box, that could be a win in our eyes because we have a lot of visibility for that phrase. Like there are some just questions in nature, like that users are typing in that like they actually don't want to click on anything. Like they might actually just want to see it quickly on the SERP and then they're done. But they're still getting the answer from your domain. And the benefit of ranking in the answer box, for example, is like if I'm asking Siri or Alexa or Hey Google, it's going to source us and it's going to actually show, it's going to answer like the question and then source where it came from. And then for whatever reason, like let's say we're also selling something around that topic, where's the user going to go when they're ready to purchase? They might actually come back to our domain because that's where they learned it from. So in some instances, it could be a good thing to show up in zero-click searches like the answer box is. We just have to kind of explain to the business why we're doing that.
So Mohammed is asking about, how to optimize for multiple languages. So he says his keywords are English. So if one searches in French, are his keywords translated, or does he need to do keyword work for each different language?
Yeah, you typically have to do keyword research in each language. Like using Conductor, you can do keyword research and other keyword research tools. You can do keyword research not only in Google US English, but in Google Spanish, in French, in France, French, because just like in different parts of the United States where keyword volume is different, people search a lot of very differently in other countries. So it is also important to like localize our content for that language. Like I can't do keyword research in other languages because I only speak English, unfortunately. But if you have that ability, I think it could make sense, especially if you're an international domain, because that's how people search in those countries.
Yeah, it's all about personalization, right? So John asks a question, and we'll see if we've got time, but this might be the last one, Zach. When writing multiple pages to target various stages of the buyer journey, which we talked about, how do you ensure that you're not cannibalizing your primary pages?
It's a great question because like that's really why I do keyword research in the beginning, and that's why I'm monitoring the content I've already written. If I have keywords that are already ranking well, I'm typically trying to avoid targeting very similar keywords. As you mentioned though, like sometimes keywords in itself are just related to each other, and the longer tail keywords have our primary keyword in there. That's where I think like having a clean internal linking structure is important, because if we are having our target keywords show up on that top level page and we're targeting all the different other keywords from the buyer's journey, by having unique landing pages and linking them to each other, Google starts to understand like they actually want this keyword to rank for this page and these other phrases to rank for these other pages, because we're sending them to that specific landing page by either targeting those keywords uniquely in the title tag and the body copy, and then also providing a link on our top level page further down in the funnel on our own site. So it does get a little difficult if we have like a specific topic that we're trying to rank better for. But in this instance, like going back to the content output strategy I did with my client, we haven't cannibalized ourselves for our top level keyword because we wrote our content very differently. We made sure that we targeted unique keywords on each page, and the content was very, very unique, so we wouldn't confuse Google around where we want to send the user for that top level keyword.
Yeah, that makes sense. There were so many questions, Zach. I mean, we didn't even get through half of them, I don't think. Sherry was really interested to hear about intent, and I don't think that we got all the way into it, Sherry. So if you had a specific question, Zach, why don't you tell us, where can people find you and Conductor after the webinar?
Absolutely. One, I do apologize for the Q&A session that my computer died, but happy that I can answer a bulk of these questions. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Zach Kadish. That's what or you can email me at zach@conductor. But feel free to definitely connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to answer any of the questions that anyone may have around this to really make sure that you have a successful keyword strategy.
Awesome. Awesome. Any last words that you want to leave us with about Conductor?
I just recommend that if you're an enterprise, if you're listening and you work in an enterprise company, it's definitely really important to have someone who is a strategic SEO and to have a platform that can really monitor your content and your keywords. So I absolutely recommend checking out our website and requesting a demo, because we can really set you up for success and make sure that your content is being found organically.
Awesome. With that, Zach, thank you so much for being here with us today. And everybody, you will get this recording later. So keep your eyes on your inbox for that. Without that, that's it. Thanks, Zach. I'll talk
Awesome.
to you later.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye.